Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Maria from Marketing Cosentino Asia. And well, I'm really glad to see a lot of audience joining from Asia, from also Europe, this live session today. Today's panel is a brilliant example of how culture shapes design. And no matter what we are doing, interior design, architecture, product design, etc. And the reason why we at Cosentino set up this session on culture is because deep and fascinating topic. It will be very interesting to learn of different dominant cultures and how they affect design in multifaceted ways, specifically in the context of Asia. Our culture is our connections to the past, to our roots. It dwells very deeply inside us, and it is a source of influence, stimulation, and motivation that leads part of our creativity. And we can help it. It's our expression of identity and attitude. And Asia is a continent that remains connected and very respectful of its traditional culture. After almost 8 years living in this continent, I can say that the culture touch is more obvious than anywhere. It can be seen, it can be smelled in design. And Cosentino can't help falling in love with culture either. It's the foundation of Cosentino's collection, created from inspiration of both traditional and modern culture from around the world. For example, the ancient Rome and Greek with its marbles reflected in our eternal collection, New York with the loft culture that we emulate in some industrial cities, our scent colors were inspired by the Japanese culture, and obviously Spain particularly, where the roots of the company are set with Arabic constructions with marble like the Alhambra of Granada, or granite like the cathedrals of Santiago and Toledo, or even Salamanca with the amazing sandstone that is our sandstone and decton colors and textures. Certainly, culture is a great tool in the world of design. And as sharing is caring, today we are extremely excited to host this cultural session with prolific and first-class experts in architecture and design from different parts of Asia. Thank you for being part of this today, to all of them. But first thing first, let me introduce the moderator of this session. It's an honor to have with us Xiuhong. Xiuhong is the director of content development consultant, LSC Communication, and the contributing editor of design and architecture magazine D+A. She believes that everyone has a story to tell, and she has spent the last 15 years writing them through roles in the media and communication industry. Hello, Xiuhong. Hello, Xiuhong. Always a pleasure always to collaborate. And well, I leave the session in your hands. And before that, to our audience, and find this topic on your faces and in your mats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for the introduction, and thank you to Cosentino for organizing this talk. So hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on cross-cultural inspirations in interior design. Before I start inviting the multicultural panel to share their stories, let me start first by introducing everyone. From Singapore, we have Colin Seah, the founder and director of the Ministry of Design. Colin has been named Designer of the Year by the International Design Awards USA in 2010 and is a two-time recipient of Singapore's highest design accolade, the President's Design Award, among many others. Colin has also recently been invited by the Singapore Tourism Board to redefine Singapore as a destination for 2020 and beyond. We have Xiuhong. Xiuhong is the co-founder and chief executive designer of Kuala Lumpur-based Blue Water Studio. He has been creating innovative spaces and solutions for a wide variety of clients over the last 30 years. Xiuhong has also received many numerous awards, both locally and internationally. A recent one was for the Edison Georgetown project in Penang, which was recognized for its outstanding design in the hospitality category in the Star Property Awards 2020, the IDA Design Awards 2019, the Ahead Asia Awards 2017, the Reka International Design Awards 2017, and the Asia Pacific Interior Design Award 2016. So hello to Xiuhong. From Indonesia, we have Santi Alesias and Humphrey Teja, and they are the co-founders of Jakarta-based Domicilium Studio and DMDIO. So Santi attended the Art Institute of Seattle and Illinois Institute of Art in Chicago, and Humphrey graduated from the Illinois Institute of Technology, so they both met when they were in Illinois. The Domicilium Studio was named as one of the A-list interior designers in Indonesia and has done work for international brands such as Nike, Marriott International, Time International, and Accor, just to name a few. The duo also co-founded DMDIO in 2018, and this is a product and exhibition design company that supports the local manufacturing industries by producing original designs for both the local and international markets. So, hi guys.
Hi.
Okay. And lastly, last but not least, from Japan, we have Aiji Inoue. So Aiji-san graduated in architecture from Meiji University. He's worked as an interior architect at a famous Japanese design studio for 11 years before establishing the Tokyo-based Doyle Collection in 2011. In just 1 year, his career expanded from Japan to the rest of Asia and Europe. Aiji-san's works have been widely praised for their method of utilizing unpredictable and unique material combinations, as we will see later. Doyle Collection was awarded as Firm of the Year in 2017 in the areas of commercial and industrial interior design. Hello, Aiji-san. We will start with a short presentation by each of the designers, followed by a panel discussion, and finally we will take questions from our audience. So please feel free to write them in the comment section, and we will address them. We'll try our best to address them later. I hope at the end of it that you will have a clearer idea on why borrowing from different cultures is a great way to practice interior design, and learn from these award-winning designers tips on how to do it. We'll start with Colin to share his 2 cents worth. Colin.
Great. Thank you so much, Xiping, and thanks again to Cosentino for this wonderful opportunity. We may not be able to travel during this COVID period, but we are actually able to go even further into people's homes and offices virtually, so I'm very thankful for that. I'm going to just speak very, very briefly, not so much about our projects, because I think our projects are available online, or if you've visited in person, projects like McAllister Mansion in Penang, or the Prestige Hotel, or our also quite recent View Beijing Hotel project, all of which are Design Hotel members. There's a chance to visit them, and there's also a chance to understand them online. But what I wanted to do instead was to just give a little bit of background of why MOD thinks the way it does when it comes to culture, and how our inroads were formed. And it's a lot to do with our history and who we are. So if I can have just the first slide. If you are familiar with Ministry of Design's work at all, I'll just wait for the first slide to come on. If you realize that it's really bias for a particular kind of aesthetic, it's very much contextual, and it responds each time to different culture, different clients, and obviously the spirit of the place. And I think that really underpins our desire to question, disturb, and redefine whatever design inspiration that we find ourselves in. The basis of this really emerges from who we are as designers, and more specifically who I am as a Singaporean designer. And I think the cultural specificity of being Singaporean is quite interesting. Singapore has always been known as the little red dot, a country or a nation that is pretty much at the crossroads and at a perpetual crossroads between the East and the West, between the North and the South globally. We have, as a result, been traders of sorts. We have been trading in goods and services. We've been trading in shipping. We have been trading right now as we evolve in also ideas. And I think because we are at this confluence and we are sort of a very porous community, unlike, for instance, our neighbors, maybe the Thais or even the Japanese, who have had the benefit of very much more sort of insular periods of time where development was enabled, and they were able to push the limits of who they were culturally and define it very specifically. In Singapore, we've not really had that benefit, not just because of the lack of time, but also because of the porosity of our boundaries. And that has made us slightly different. It has made me not so much someone who views culture and tradition as something that's static. I view it as something that is incredibly fluid. In fact, I don't see tradition and culture as something that looks to the past alone. In fact, I see it as a continuum of time where the past is obviously an anchor point. But then what we do now is the basis for what is to come in the future. So there's this kind of stretched continuum that we are constantly a part of and able to contribute to. I could have a slide where I have the text. That's slide 3. So this was the first. This graphic represents Ministry of Design's ethos to question, in the question mark, disturb through very hard work and a lot of swearing a lot of time, then to redefine our cultural experiences through hotels, through lifestyle projects. The second slide was really, if we can move to that, which just about how the porosity of Singapore is an island, like I talked about, the little red dot, which is at a perpetual crossroads. And then it leads us basically to this particular point in time, which is the next slide, where I find myself personally situated culturally to be in between the more polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to culture. On one hand, you can be very overly reverential towards culture, or you could be incredibly disrespectful. But we find ourselves kind of in the in-between place. The in-between place that also is in between reality and fantasy, between preservation, which is, not changing anything, or erasure, which is completely obliterating the past, or mimicry, which is just following, and ambivalence, which is not caring. So we find ourselves in that middle ground where we find lots of opportunities culturally for things that are infused with humor, that take a reality and makes it a fantasy, but it's all culturally based. I'm not sure that the last slide will show up, but in doing so, the last slide, if I can have the last slide, please. In doing so, because of that in-between place I find myself, therefore, I think my response to different points of inspiration is quite varied. So on the one hand, I could be inspired, as I was in a journey to China recently, where we were working on a project in a quite a remote area outside of Hangzhou, by the seal carvings of an artist over 200 years ago, Wu Changshuo, and the notion of the negative and the positive, or the strokes, and how they inspired in the end how we design certain tactility of the space, and how I see similar trends in that, which is almost 200 years ago, with something that's very current. A very humble signage shop that I walk past in the neighborhood I live in, where you would take these and you would spray on the ground during construction work. And it's very inexpensive, has no real heritage, but yet it has a certain similar spirit in terms of what it represents and how it could also be an inspiration point for our projects. And I thought that contrast was quite interesting. And I think we would find that repeatedly in our work, where there's that kind of border of irreverence and also a certain sense of quirk. So I think with that, I'd like to pass it back to Xiuhong, and look forward to hearing what the other speakers have to share.
Okay, thank you, Colin. That was very interesting. Like you, because I'm also from Singapore, I can identify very much with what you've shared about how Singapore is a crossroads city and how our culture is very fluid, it's very diverse, and it's made up of many different types of cultures as well. I think also what you said about how you find yourself in between the polar ends of culture to be something that's also quite unique. And so, yeah, I look forward to hearing more from you later during the discussion on some examples from you on how you actually respond to this in the projects that you've completed. So next up, let's hear from designer across the causeway from us, Xiuhong from Blue Water Studio. It's over to you. Thank you.
Hi, Xiuhong. And thank you, Cosentino and Xiuhong, having me to share this session today. I'm just going to quickly jump into the sharing here. We define culture as belief and customs, values. Art is very important, music, cuisines, and social habits of a particular group of people or the community. And these are passed along from one generation to the next. Cross-culture, can I have the slide, please? Cross-culture in interior design is about a concept or an understanding the history of the location, the people's background and their heritage, their social behavior, which recognizes differences in the manner and methods of their style, culture, and tradition. So it's very key for us to bridge them together and to offer a modern interpretations of luxury and elegance, and to a cohesive narrative that tells the story with cross-cultural influences and inspiration. And therefore, different culture values can impact the design by giving different experiences in the spaces and the environment from province to province. The slide before that, can you go back? Yeah, for example, the volume of space and proportion for a resort lobby that we design in China are very different compared to Japan or in Malaysia. But yet they share the similar values and function. They could be even the same hotel brand, but yet different in how the local culture and belief can influence the design and the spaces. Next. The cultural differences will also influence our design in many ways, from materiality to colors, textures, lighting, illumination, the tone and manner, arts and craft, and even the landscaping. With the diverse and unique rich culture and heritage, this will lead to craft a compelling story and narrative which will inspire the designers to create a unique and a memorable interior experience. In our studio, we believe behind every design there is a story. Behind every story there is an inspiration. I'd like to share that with the influences of different culture, considerations of local tradition, and respecting the local arts and craft, this will add a new dimension to the interior, which create a sustainable design solution. As an interior designer, we have a very important role to play, and that is bridging the gap between cultures, tradition, and modernity. I'd like to leave a quote that I've been using for the last couple of years: respect the past, connect the future. Thank you.
That you've prepared for us as well.
So we were so lucky that we have a chance to transform this to a 25 rooms boutique hotel, which is managed by the Small Little Hotel. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiuhong. And I stayed at the Edison when I visited Penang in 2017 myself. And yeah, it was really a memorable experience. It's really beautiful. So thank you for that. I think, what you said that really resonated with me. Two things. Firstly was that how as an interior designer, you have to bridge the gap between cultures, tradition, and modernity. I think that's absolutely very important. And I would like to explore that a little bit further with you later. And the other thing as well that you said was about how different cultures can influence different spaces and proportions in a project. I find that in my time as editor of D+A, I've come across many projects that were submitted to me from interior designers who, instead of talking about this, a lot of times they make the mistake of just treating interior design as an exercise of embellishment of spaces rather than carving out spaces. So thank you for sharing that. And next up, we have the duo from Indonesia, so Santi and Humphrey, the co-founders of Domicilium Studio. Over to you guys. Over to you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. We want to thank you, Xiuhong, for having us over, and also Cosentino for allowing us to share our little experience with everybody. So my name is Humphrey Teja, and this is my partner.
I'm Santi Aloysius.
Yeah, so we have an interior design firm in Jakarta, and we have the firm is about 11 years old now. We started in 2009, and so we are actually more focused onto hospitality design. So what we want to do today is basically share some of our design experience with everybody. So I guess both me and Santi have lived outside in the US as well as Singapore for quite some time before finally making our way back to Indonesia. So during those times, we have so many cultural shock, like moving from one country to the other, and so it's like a thing that we have to really quickly adapt to culture shocks, to new cultures. And so this enables us to actually put that into good use for our designing skill as well, how to translate cultures, especially new cultures.
Like years back, one of our mentors was telling us that when we came back, we were too American to be in Asia, and we have our own like special, our own way when we're designing. You know, of course, when we had our back in the experience, but again, like we have to relearn everything from zero. And when even though we were like born and raised in Indonesia, we kind of have to relearn about culture, and that has been a really interesting journey for us as a firm as well. So over the years, we met with several hospitality groups. The one thing that we have to commend them on was the fact that they understood on banking on local cultures to their projects, because that can be very beneficial for their businesses. In order to achieve a good project is by cross-pollinating two different cultures, which is the local and the guest, which is, or the brand, the international brand itself. So in a way, we have to learn how to design something that is very appealing for the global with local flavor. What you can say is like a local or global local, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we have the next slide?
Can we have the next slide with the next one, please? The palace with the water? Yes.
Right. So with that, we wanted to show a little bit of designing Marriott Hotel in Indonesia. So our inspiration comes from this location. It's actually a heritage building that was built in the mid-18th century. And it is actually a water palace, or Ramansari as they call it in Indonesia, or the water palace. And this is the place where the Sultan will take a shower with, or take a bath with his wife and concubines, as well as his daughters. So it's actually a very private sanctuary. And up until only recently that they actually renovate this compound, and the rest of the compound has been destroyed. So it's been taken over by other residents.
Yeah. So for this project, Marriott Yogyakarta, I think we forgot to mention that. We took the inspiration from this bathing house, or it was like the resort for the Sultanate back then. So when we took this inspiration, we really like looked into all the symbolism and all the decorations and also the architectural part of this historical building itself. And this cue is actually like we have with this research, we have to relearn about our roots, and it's becoming a really interesting journey where we have to understand how to translate them to our design to make it more appealing internationally.
Can we have the next slide? So this is another photo. I'll be brief about it. So this is actually located within the compound, and this is where the Sultan will come for the ablution area, where he will wash himself before he goes for prayers. Can we have the next slide?
Next slide, please. Okay.
So we designed this space around the images before. So this is actually a skylight, a circular skylight to kind of reflect the ablution area from the picture before. And this is actually shining into the lobby. So if we can have the next slide. So as you can see there, we have a circular skylight over there, which we took from the form of the ablution area. And below that, we actually takes a lot of the elements of the stairs that we mimic onto the columns, and also the water elements, the ripples that we mimic on the back of the concierge.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay.
And this is the reception area. So of course, this is the face of the hotel. And so when we want to communicate with people that when they come into the hotel was basically that they're coming into this water palace. And for those of you who don't know the story about Yogyakarta, most people will associate Yogyakarta with Borobudur, which is a Buddhist structure, but unfortunately that's not correct. Borobudur is actually located about
outside of Yogyakarta.
Yes, about an
just
hour
next
away
door,
from
actually.
Yogyakarta. So that's why we decided to to tribute this property to
the water
Taman
palace.
Sari.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
As you can see, we took another cue on the ripple of the water from the ceiling of this the lounge area in the lobby, and we also took a little details like the traditional weaving on the left side, which is like very regional to the true Yogyakarta craftsmen. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is the detail, where it presents like the local culture and also the international flavor.
Right. And what we wanted to highlight in this project is like there's so many artisans that works around Yogyakarta, and we actually found several artisans who actually does a lot of this hand-woven weaving. The material is quite sturdy. I mean, we use like synthetic rattans that was actually recycled from old plastic bottles, and this is what this craftsmen do, you know. And over here we are showing the double tanjung, which is a very it's
a regional central Java pattern.
Right.
Yeah. Next, please. This is the detail of some cues that we took from the symbolism from the water palace itself. I don't know if you remember in the first slide, there's a little like flower detailing. It's actually representing the jasmine water that falls on the water and creates the ripples. On the left side of this picture is actually that represents the jasmine flower that will actually you will find around on the design around the hotel as we go. Next, please.
And this is the all-day dining, the Yogyakarta kitchen. So we take this from inspiration from walking around in Yogyakarta, and I think me and Santi were both like fascinated by the food over there
and the market. Yeah.
And so
yeah,
this is like actually quite a fun place for us to design. So we're trying to bring in like Indonesian element, Yogyakarta element into this restaurant by showing all the hustle bustle and a little bit more like interesting weavings from the baskets and everything else.
Next, please. Like the water ripple effect and the water effect, actually we try to apply them to the design of the carpet, the X means the carpet on the corridor, and as well as some more symbolism of the jasmine flower on the room number panel laser cuts. Next.
And this is the standard room. I guess we just repeated the same elements again. Can we have the next slide?
And I think we come to this is the suite of the hotel itself, where a lot of the design actually more translated into this area, and a lot of these materials actually we design we specify locally. And also, again, if you can see, like there's a lot more. Like we try to package everything to look more international with some local flavor. I think that's all that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to share our experience.
Thank you, guys. So yeah, I think that was absolutely fascinating how you walked us through the details of the project, of the hotel in Jogja. I think later I want to explore a little bit more thoroughly with you how much of that project was yourself how much was that from influences from around the world, and how you balance that all of those elements together to create this project? Because as you say very correctly, in order to get a local effect, especially across large hospitality chains around the world, this is a really fine balance that you need to strike. Okay, and so now we move on to the final speaker for this evening, Aiji-san from the Doyle Collection. Okay, over to you, Aiji-san.
Hi, Sitting. Thank you for inviting this time. And hello, everyone. Let's start my part. Culture is something that I have experienced over a year, and standard I can unconsciously refer to what is beautiful and what is uncomfortable in terms of designing a space. So no doubt the culture plays an important role in my design. Growing up in Japanese culture, this important element in my design is floor planning. This is a floor plan of Japanese castle. As you may have noticed, there are not many corridors expressed in brown in this floor plan. You can see many rooms, but these rooms are partitioned in blue line by sliding screens made of papers. This is not only unique to Japanese castles, but it is a floor plan. Go back to slide. Thanks. It is a floor plan that has applied to ordinary house buildings until very recently, unlike rooms and spaces partitioned by walls in European castles. These rooms are only partitioned by the sliding screens, not fully closed. People can imagine what could the next room be like by the sound from the surroundings, and what to expect from the next room. There are no clear physical boundaries. You know that each room has its function and their meanings, but opening the sliding screen can still give you a sense of exciting feelings. This is a design concept as shown in this castle floor plan, which I often use in my floor planning. Next, please. I was fascinated with the Spain culture when I once traveled to Barcelona and was inspired by the atmosphere of the food hall El Nacional, this one. I often receive many offers in designing Spanish restaurants and bars. Spanish restaurant culture is so different from Japanese ones, but I just wanted to bring this atmosphere into Japan as it is. My challenge was how to adapt the Spanish restaurant culture into Japan in a way the client accepts. In general, Japanese are not used to large spaces, as you saw small rooms in the castle floor plan. However, if you install sliding screens or walls, the whole atmosphere of El Nacional will not be delivered. Given the feeling of blockage may make the customers uncomfortable. Next, please. So I transformed the concept of the sliding screen into using blank or free spaces in between to express the typical Japanese ma or ma'ai, the word in Japanese, which is something like a space or distance if you translate it into English. Distancing is, just a little. But there is value in this just a little. Next, please. This blank space doesn't have the function of blocking the other side of the room. But it has the function of dividing the given expectation of what is there further beyond the connecting the atmosphere. Next, please. Next, please. Thanks. So, culture, in my case, Japanese is a great tool to support my design concept for clients. Next, please. Thanks. It's my all. Is that the button to Zipping?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Aiji-san. Yeah, that was likewise. I think what you presented was a really great example of how two very, very different cultures have come together to create the interior design of a restaurant. So very, very fascinating examples. Thank you. So we will now move on to the second part of the session, which is the panel discussion. So we'll have everybody join me virtually on the screen. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start off the first question to Aiji-san, just because he was the last one to speak. And I think we can't avoid the fact that we have to do this virtually because of the pandemic that we are living through. So I need to ask the question of how, Aiji-san, you think the technique of using cross-cultural inspiration in interior design will be affected because of COVID-19?
Yeah, impact on and change the interior design. I believe that distance will become important as the social distancing you hear every day in the media show well. The expression of this distance may change greatly depending on each culture, but I think it will make a new culture that become a common sense throughout the world. In the restaurant project I work with most of the times, restaurants want as many tables as possible to increase the profitability. But after this pandemic, restaurants must take into account customer voice that they want to maintain distance from the neighboring tables as much as possible. And the restaurants must reduce the number of tables. When the numbers of tables are reduced, the restaurant must also think of increasing its profitability. But how do you do that? Well, I think solving these how issues are my job. It's a new challenge. Now, travel has become difficult for everyone. We must bring in new design and new cultures in order to attract customers. We must come with designs that provide customers new spaces and new experiences from existing restaurants with newly secured social distancing. Today, through the internet, we can acquire new information of newly opened restaurants from all over the world and also know about their reputation. What is more, the speed of popularity will sure to accelerate if we could draw the world attention. So, what comes into fashion next will likely to be similar worldwide. In other words, similar tastes will be popular simultaneously. Then, that will become another new culture. From that point onward, we could adopt various cultures again. Therefore, to respond quickly to client needs is essential, and knowing more about other cultures and interior elements enable to blend them and to create your own new culture, I think.
Thank you, Aiji-san. So, thank you. Yeah, so I think yeah, your last point is interesting about how, you know, when you talk about how globalization has created a global culture, but then as a result, we might also create new cultures because of the pandemic. I think I want to direct the next question to Colin, because I think we see a little bit of that, but we have lived through that in Singapore, right? If you think about how we are the result of an amalgamation of many different cultures from around the world coming together to become Singapore. Do you have any thought on this issue?
Yeah, I believe that the whole notion of the joy that we experience from something that's culturally authentic is enhanced because there is a much more fluid flow of cultural influences globally through technology and also through travel, although that probably will change a little bit in the future. And because a lot of it is transmitted maybe as a result getting diluted or get the nature and the intensity of the experiences are sort of like lessened. The seeking out of something that is far more authentic, far more moving at a deeper level has become something that people are more fascinated by. And so I think it's challenging as designers because in most of the cases, we are not necessarily interested in preservation. So what does authenticity mean? Then one must suggest that it means creating the next step. But how do you create the next step? What is the value upon which you create the next step? And therefore, the designer becomes integral in shaping what culture is. You're not necessarily just observing and integrating, you are transposing it. So we become actually much more than just people who design spaces, but we shape the perception of how a specific locale is perceived, rightfully or wrongfully. So there's kind of great responsibility in that. But as a Singaporean, we've often done that, right? In fact, most of the practices that we have and the foods that we have are not 100%, they're not 100% authentically original. They're not purely unique. They are amalgamation of different things, and they're put together in a certain way. So I think we will see that merging of differences coming together to create hybrids or new interesting versions of culture. And as long as it's not presented as, authentic, then I think that's okay. As long as people know that this is a transposition of what used to be. We had to do that too for one of our projects in Beijing, where we were working on a boutique hotel in the Hohai district, which is very historic. And the buildings surrounding us looked and were completely authentic, dating back hundreds of years, with people and families who had been living there for many generations. But our own building was a replica of those from the 1970s, so they were not actually old. And so we had this dilemma whether we would dress it up to appear like it was old, or would we give some clue for the viewer to recognize, although it looked old, it wasn't old. And we chose the latter because we felt that was more honest in a way. And as a result, we created something that was different from what was locally available. So I think that's important. That responsibility needs to be thought through carefully and not just blindly mimicked.
Yeah, I think Xiuhong, you have also experience in this area, right? You talk about how earlier you said in your session that as an interior designer you have to bridge the gap between cultures, tradition, and modernity. Would you like to add on to what Colin has shared? How can this be done in your opinion?
Well, I think Colin already explained all. Thank you, Colin. I guess it's the thought process is what was there before, right? If we are doing a new hotel or an existing building, we would like to know more about the surrounding and, like Colin said, the people who used to live there, and really understand what was it before, because there's a lot of rich history and influences within that. So we spend a lot of time doing the research and to redefine the real essence of the neighborhood and how we can translate it in a contemporary design while retaining the tradition by focus on simplicity. We like to simplify the design approach or even the detailing, and create create a comfort for the guests or the people who's going to use the spaces. So so this process is kind of like a layering. So you kind of looking into layer by layer and how you could sort of progressively inject the soul and the feel into this new environment, which we call it tomorrow or the future. So I look at it as almost like a stage that it keeps evolving. And of course focus on how we can understand a bit more about the arts and craft and the local craftsmen, and how we can work with them and transform it to something which is more relevant to the future.
Actually, what you talked about, Xiuhong, is interesting because when you say a minimal approach, I think maybe what I take away, especially understanding your work, is that you're trying to distill what traditionally exists into its essence and then work forwards. So you work backwards to distill what is something's essence, the core essence, and then you work forwards again to say, how then do I use that essence and transpose it into something more modern, which is how it is tied to the past. So it's not necessarily just an aesthetic or a material or even a craftsman, although it could be all of those things. It's more the distillation of what the essence of something is. And I think that's actually really fundamental. If I were a designer, I would also ask the question, how does one translate something that is culturally traditional into something that's modern? And I think that's how you do it, right? It's not just a fascination
Well, yeah, thank you for the summary. It's basically you walk 2 steps back and 5 steps forward.
Yeah. And hopefully you walk forwards with the stuff that really counts. Because, if we were to analyze something, let's say something that's culturally beloved, but then we distill it down to actually something that is not essential to its being, and we transpose that forward, then we have lost the thread. We have lost the continuity already. So as interior designers, I don't know whether they're teaching these in schools or how we even and practice this in our studios, but really the notion of being cultural analysts, right, and ethnographers to some degree, how we are able to distill, and it does require some kind of sophistication, and it's not easy. It takes time.
I think Santi and Humphrey can probably share a little bit as well, add on a little bit of their experience. And I think when you do that, can you also share with us how you balance that the global part of the local equation in coming up with your design?
Very careful. No, actually, we, again, like what Colin said and Mr. Lai, we do take the essence itself from the culture, and we basically spend a lot of time in Jogja at that time as well, and then we've been spending some time before even the project was commenced. And we try not to be one of those designers who just like stuff and trying to apply it to things that are very obvious. We try to make it. We try to translate it into the modern shape of things, and we try also to use a lot of the local materials available over there, and that's what makes it Yogyakarta. Because with all the, we try to use like all the texture that's familiar to that area, all the colors, and all the, it's just the soul and the feel, even the smell of the hotel. So it takes all the 5 senses to translate that into our design.
Right. I mean, in short, I guess it's just a way of telling a story from our project. So what we hope that people will see is like basically the project will say something about Jakarta, why you want to come here, and like it leaves quite a impression on people who come to Jogja.
How about the balancing of global and local? Because we're talking about cross-cultural inspiration, right? It's not just about distilling what the local culture is, but also trying to infuse that international flavor into your project. How do you do that?
Yeah, always the function. So when we're designing hospitality projects like Marriott, they always try to look into the function itself and how they operate and how they can actually use work in the hotel, basically, and day-to-day operation. Then after that, we take all the other like nicer decorative design and infuse it into the hotel. So we try to use the modern way of lifestyle first and forms the functionality, right?
No, lately it's been like form follows.
The budget as well. We have to fit it with the budget, right? That's when I saw one of the questions, like how do you balance dream and design? Well, by using a lot of the local materials, and that's why we have to be very sensitive with the culture and like what's available local there.
Also, I'm not sure, Shiping, that I would say one should take for granted that the blending or the bringing together of global and local aspirations or standards are necessary in every project, because If you're talking about mod cons, like, things that travelers, international travelers are accustomed to, certain comforts, maybe that's as far as I would go. But in terms of even how, for instance, hotel rooms are planned, I think there is a huge, it's a huge misstep if we were to assume that for every brand, for every global chain, there are certain standards that need to be applied all the time. And why I say this is because for certain specific, unique projects, the way one lives, I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say the tatami room and a futon bed. Now that doesn't meet any global standard, right? But if you were to try and really create if you were after the essence of, let's say, what a tatami room was like, and it would be interesting to do it would be interesting to see someone doing a modern interpretation of it, because I haven't really. It's either a normal modern room or a traditional tatami room that I've not really seen anyone do something that tries to essentialize what a tatami room is and then modernize it. But if you were to impose a global standard on that particular scenario, you would not have something authentic. That's just a very simple example, but I'm quite sure there are very many others that exist for the more specific we get culturally. But the truth of the matter is, most projects, especially if you're designing for global brands, the aspiration is not to bowl you over with something that is so unique. It's to push you to a point where you're comfortable, not to push you beyond that. Because to really push you beyond that, it means that you have to eat food that you're not used to. You have to sleep in a way that you're not used to. It means you have to acclimate to a climate that you're not used to. But the truth is, we're not about to do that, right? So I think sometimes we pay lip service to what authenticity means, but if we really were to dig deeper, there should be a specific sort of genre of project, maybe not all of them, but one in every 20 projects that does aspire towards something that does not. It takes the global guidebook or the standard and just flings it out the window, because who cares? That's not what we're trying to do for that particular project, at least.
How much? I'm just and this. Any of you are welcome to answer this. How much of your own personal culture do you inject into your projects as well? Is this like a conscious thought process that you have as you're working on it? Because there's the client's brief, right? And then there's also all the contextual aspect of a project that you need to take into consideration. What about personally? How much of that comes into the picture?
For us, it depends on the project and it's more interesting, more important than the others that are not international brand, which is like one of them is the Cosentino Hotel in Jakarta. It's one of the first design hotel in Indonesia, and we inject a lot of our personality. It's a really fun project. Now we regretted that we didn't show that one instead. It's a very fun project. It's a small hotel.
I love the project of yours, by the way. It's really nice. I wish you had shown that.
I think it's a full personality, and then
it's super joy,
Yeah, it's so cheeky.
Yeah, I love it.
It depends. When we receive assignment from clients, we kind of see we do have a presentation project that is actually super fun, that we take care of it our own baby. And there's another one that we have to obliged to do it with the brand standard, the international standard, like the form and follow function and all the other standards. But we try to make a balance between those projects as well. But yeah, we do have our favorites.
Right. Like Colin said, it's like 1 in every 20 projects.
Yeah, 1 in every.
I think it's more like 1 in 50 projects.
1,000.
Well, I think that ratio is fine, because it's not like 1 in every 50 travelers once. It's not like there's more than 1 in every 50 travelers that wants that super rail experience. Most of us travel with some level of insulation from the context. I know I'm guilty of that too. Like when I go to even some place that's really lushly tropical and beautiful, I want to sit behind glass in aircon and view the green. But that's just me, it's terrible, but I know that's true. If it was really authentic, I would be happy with the bugs and insects and mosquitoes and everything else.
I think you and Alhambra will be a good.
Mr. Lai, anything you want to add? You need to unmute your mic.
Shipping. Why does he get Mr. Lai and none of us get Mr. Minister?
How the whole industry calls
You look respectable, Xiuhong. That's why you look respectable.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Nothing to share, shipping.
Okay. Then I just want to shift the discussion a little bit away towards research, right? And in case you're wondering why I have moved into the Q&As, is because we don't really have many questions, so we'll just continue the discussion here. And I think I just want to move briefly into the idea, the concept, the area of research, and how you go about doing it. Social media, how much does that help you in your research? Across a very, very cross-cultural project that you have to do? Yes, Santi, I can see you laughing.
We're social media whore here.
Okay.
We use them to max to stalk. Well, we do. That's how, thank God we live in the age of internet and social media, that we can actually, our mind can travel, even though we're all locked up here in our respective countries. But our mind can travel a lot. Like last time we did research, when I did research, I think I went to museums all over Europe with the Google, I forgot the.
During the pandemic,
I went all over the world with going from one museum to the other museum, and also I use a lot of Instagram to do our research while I'm at home. And I think it's very important nowadays to do everything online, because we cannot physically be there at all.
You haven't started TikTok yet.
Oh no, I don't want to do TikTok. No, sorry.
Yeah. But social media, I feel also is a sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because there's already one level of curation. And so when we digest or consume social media, we are already subject to curation of whoever did it. And to be honest, social media whores or social media hermits aside, the level of curation and quality for social media on the whole is not high. People mimic and they know what works, and so they just do more of the same. So you get sort of like a virtuous cycle where social media just kind of reinforces itself. So in a way, it's easy because it does all the trend spotting for you, right? And if you just wanted simply popular projects but not critical projects, then it's actually a great tool to either its research or also its production. So one shouldn't shy away from it, but there's certain pros and cons that one must be aware of. I think one of the questions that were asked, and I'm sure everyone can answer this too, but I'm just going to get a first stab at it, was what is the most inspiring thing about designing spaces? The question was most inspiring thing about being an interior designer, but I think I'd like to expand it because some of us here are architects as well. But what is the most inspiring thing about designing spaces? And I would say, for me, the satisfaction of space versus form, which is architecture, I think architecture is a lot about place making in terms of the urban context. And you recognize something on the landscape, how it sits, whether it's embedded, whether it stands out. But space is something that we all inhabit, and we spend the majority of time in any building on the inside of it, not the outside of it. And it's gratifying because space enables us to elevate our cultural aspirations to the highest point. It serves the need for shelter. I think hotels are a wonderful example of that, right? Because hotels, I mean, if we were in a foreign country, whether on work or leisure, we need a place to rest our heads and get clean and feed ourselves. So hotels play that role. They are function based that way. But so we also acknowledge that they elevate our souls because they speak to the culture of the place, and they stimulate, or they scintillize, or they calm us in many ways. So I think the greatest pleasure, I would say, is to basically shape emotion and to emotionally choreograph spaces for people, either to excite or to chill them, and we have the power to do that, through what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's really quite amazing. But what do the others think?
Well, I agree with you, Colin, in terms of the interior design is about experience of the spaces that we created. So that's main key. And link it back to what Shiping was asking about how much we depends on social media, right? Social media is great, it's fast, you get to know really like things on the spot, what's going on and what is the latest things that has been designed. But what I felt was just with social media, we can see that the look and feel, and we can try to, get a good understanding of what this design is trying to say. But unfortunately, without being there, you really can't feel the space like what you share, Colin. We need to immerse in the whole environment and to really, reflect what is this space and what is it doing to us, and how this has positive values or positive impact to the user. So I still believe that social media is good, but we need to be there. We need to really be in that space to experience the whole environment.
Cool.
Sati and Humphrey, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, we miss the real experience of things. Like it's very crucial. But yeah, I mean, like for social media, we need to have that filter from ourselves, trying to cue like what we want to say, what we're looking for. So I think not a lot of people has that filter. It's a bit like it will go wild. You can just do whatever, find whatever you want to see. And at the end, a lot of the younger ones, even younger designers than us, when they're designing, I can see that there's a lack of like substance and depth to the design. But it just looks pretty. It's like, yes, it's nice to take picture on this, but it's just an empty shell. So they don't really know how to. When somebody asks about what would be the content for that, they wouldn't really understand how to tell the story. And I guess that's a bit dangerous for our design world, for our industry.
Yeah. Hey Santi, you look like you're in a hotel suite or something.
We're in our project because actually we're working right now. We're taking pictures of one of our projects, so this is our project.
Hey. Nice.
We're on.
Okay. I think I'm gonna conclude the session here. I think we had a good discussion today about the topic. We managed to cover, a little bit about how do you distill the culture, different cultures to create a project that you're working on. We discussed briefly about the effects of globalization on your projects. And we also looked at the research aspect of cross-cultural influences. So I think I want to sum up with what Xiuhong shared as a key message. I think that if there's one message I hope that everybody takes away with is what I would like to quote him and that is that, you know, we should respect the past and connect the future. And I think I would also want to add that we should also be sensitive to people from all different cultures. I think now more than ever in 2020, I think this is so important. Yeah. So I hope that everyone in the audience has found the session useful and had a clearer idea on why borrowing from different cultures is a great way to practice interior design. So I would like to thank firstly the panelists for joining us today. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank Cosentino for creating the opportunity for the design industry to exchange ideas. And finally, to you, the audience, for joining us. And if you enjoyed this, please continue to look out for other talks that Cosentino will be organizing down the road. We talked about social media, so yes, I think they will make these announcements on social media. So do follow them when you can. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, and have a very good evening ahead.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.